In Chapter 10 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, we saw more confirmation that Boruto's fear of using the Karma Seal, it was indeed the reason he ran off in such a hurry when his Karma Seal began to resonate with Kawaki's, and when we see him hiding from Kawaki while he's speaking to Shikamaru, Boruto is drawn sweating profusely and holding his hand that possesses the Karma, and he's telling Shikamaru that he will be fine, but that he needs the time to rest. And while this is happening, we see a toad that Kashin Koji uses to monitor Boruto suddenly look very alarmed, watching Boruto very closely. This, in my opinion, is as big of a deal, if not an even bigger deal, than the battles of Sarada versus Hidari and the awakening of Biju Chakra inside of Himawari, which is why in today's newest Naruto Explained video, I want to have a discussion and I want to put my stake down on something that I believe is either the case or very close to being the case, which is the reason behind Boruto's reaction and the one that Kashin Koji had via his toad. So you longtime viewers of the channel, you know that even before we got to the time skip, I said I wouldn't be shocked if karma ended up being a bigger problem for Boruto when he's not able to fully control it, which would even the playing field between himself and Kawaki, in particular if there is a gap between the two. And after the time skip, we saw him continuously fight without using the karma, particularly against the awakened Shinju despite needing that power boost. It was a red flag that there was a Momoshiki issue at hand. Well, after this last chapter, I want to double down on all of that, and I want to say that I believe we need to ask if something dark happened to Boruto after the time skip when he was at his most vulnerable, which is in that time after he and Sasuke fought against Code and Boruto's forced to run away during their battle. We saw what happened afterwards, Boruto picking up Sasuke's sword and vowing to continue fighting and keep his promise to protect Sarada. But that's why I want to bring your attention, because I think that this scene is going to be more important than we realize. Boruto during that time, he had just lost Sasuke, and that's a bigger problem than I think people realize, because Sasuke is a more important person to Boruto than just being someone who Boruto aspired to be like. Sasuke was also the bane of Momoshiki's existence when Momoshiki was attempting to gaslight Boruto into despair and force Boruto to give up control of his body to him by breaking his spirit mentally. The thing that pissed off Momoshiki more than anything else was the fact that Sasuke was there to build up Boruto's mental health by providing support to him, hearing him out when the entire world seemed to have turned their backs on Boruto and wanted him dead, and Momoshiki was absolutely fuming. Had Sasuke not been there from the start, it's very possible, it's very likely that Momoshiki would have gotten the very thing that he wanted, which was Boruto to fall into despair, because that support that Sasuke gave to Boruto is what was strengthening his resolve. Momoshiki in chapter 80 of Boruto Naruto Next Generations, he drew a very clear line to it. What do you think happens when Boruto finds himself dealing with the combination of shame that he was too weak, or rather he was too unskilled to stand beside his master in combat against Code, knowing that his master's defeat, it fell on his shoulders, and even worse, his own inadequacy is what helped speed up Sasuke's defeat. While I've done a whole video going over the samurai element to the symbolism of Boruto's broken sword, I want to bring your attention to something else. When Sasuke tells Boruto that they can't win this battle, what do you notice about Boruto when you look at that page? His Karma Seal is not cut on, and there's no indication that he even used the Karma Seal at any point in their battle. If things were that dire, he would have used Karma and kept it on. Granted, the entire battle, except for Sasuke's last moments, they were all off screen, but it stands to reason if there had been a battle that took place, he would have used the Karma Seal, except if he was afraid to use Karma. When you add in where Boruto's mental state of mind would have been at the point where it would have been in shambles, he just lost the person who was helping him navigate through the hell that he knew as omnipotence. Boruto, for the first time, would have been truly alone, with a certain parasitic alien sharing his body, gaslighting him in his mind, because as we saw towards the end of Boruto Naruto Next Generations, their thoughts, they were crossing over due to their souls being so closely attached. For the first time, Momoshiki would have gotten the thing that he wanted, Boruto's mental state of mind being weakened, and I think there's a strong possibility that even if for a short period of time, Boruto might have lost control of his body after Sasuke was defeated, and even the possibility that he might have harmed someone when Momoshiki was in control. We've seen that Boruto, he's a sensitive kid. The mere thought that he attacked his sensei and destroyed his Rinnegan, it kept him up at night, and it spooked him to the point that he wouldn't fall asleep unless he was in Naruto's arms. The idea that Momoshiki took over his body and tried to kill his father, it did a number on Boruto as well. If someone innocent was harmed or even killed, that would be enough to make Boruto Boruto be afraid of his Karma Seal, and that brings me to this next point. Is this when Kashin Koji would have met Boruto? If that is so, then it explains why Kashin Koji's toad was shown with that worried expression on his face. From a narrative perspective, it feels like these things are all interconnected, especially when you factor in Boruto is being placed on the sideline from the battles that are ongoing right now, and we happen to have a toad that Kashin Koji uses to communicate with Boruto right there on the scene, and we still don't have the answers as to when Boruto and Kashin Koji met up, the context behind them meeting up and working together, and so much more. All of that is too big of information to leave out, and it does seem like this would be something that's explored. Just as waiting to get the reveal to what happened to Sasuke took into the next manga volume, I believe given where we are right now, being 2 chapters into volume 3 of Two Blue Vortex as of chapter 10, that we're going to get the answers to those questions sooner rather than later. If Boruto did harm someone, it adds more to his internal conflict as a character, because this provides a certain type of conflict that he isn't going to be able to take a Rasengan to and just defeat the problem. It also adds a different layer and a twist to the issue that we saw when Naruto was shown after the time skip using the Nine Tails power. Jiraiya, he had loosened the seal to try and help him control the power, and it brought Jiraiya near death. Naruto, however, while that did spook him, he still chose at times to give into that power whenever he was confronted with his emotions, like say the battle with Orochimaru. We have the opposite here. Even though Kashin Koji is serving as a Jiraiya per se, since he is Jiraiya's clone, Ishiki had the line about all genetics being tied to a person's fate. Boruto doesn't wish to use the Karma Seal here because he's seemingly afraid of it, to a point where even Kawaki picks up on it, and it's a sign of his own fear and his own weakness. Biologically speaking, on a genetic level, despite Boruto's appearance, he's not even human anymore. Yet as we see, he still retained the very thing that makes him a human, which is his emotions and his capacity to love and to care for people. Yet for someone as sensitive as him, if he lost control and he killed someone or he harmed them, that would be a sign that he's starting to lose his humanity because of Momoshiki. That is a perfect storm for Boruto to get more layers added and make him a more sympathetic character. Part of the issue with Boruto and Boruto Naruto Next Generations was, on one hand, he was relatable in that he was a spoiled brat with so many different options available to him. He came off very unappreciative, very much so like a lot of the critiques that people have of Gen Z. So people that were born between 1997 and 2012 having more options for entertainment than any generation prior, not being truly appreciative of the era of time that we live in. It was something that struck a nerve with some fans because it held up a mirror potentially to some of their own undesirable traits, in my opinion. But for the most part, most fans could not relate to the prodigy aspect of Boruto as a main character. It wasn't something that most people could actually vibe with. It's different than, say, what we saw with Minato and Neji and etc., because they weren't main characters. Statistically speaking, only 2% of the population has an IQ score that is in the range of having genius level IQ, and that's with the most generous of scaling. If you go by the accepted IQ level for geniuses, only 0.48% of the world has an IQ of 140. It's less than 0.003% of the population that has an IQ of 150 or higher. Most people, they aren't a Boruto, they aren't a Minato, they aren't a Neji, they aren't an Itachi who can just look at something and figure out the mechanics of how something works. Neji freaking learned the hidden jutsu of the Hyuga clan just by watching people like Hinata's father use it. Nobody taught it to him. Or in the case of Boruto, he's so smart that he finds shortcuts to get the same result of a task. So instead of having to go from A to B to C, then back to B because you made a mistake, and then you move back to C, and then you move to D to accomplish the task, Boruto and people like him, they just went from A to B, and then they skipped C and they went straight to D because they found a faster way to do it. Characters like that, they work in bite-sized chunks, as in not a main character, or if they are a main character, they have a more relatable character flaw that can resonate with viewers. For Boruto, giving him this obstacle with the Karma Seal, it makes him a more relatable character to the average reader of a shonen series that expects your main character to stumble and bumble their way forward or to go through trials and adversity in order to get to the end product. It also gives readers something to root for him with, because we have to see him overcome that burden and that trauma that comes from Momoshiki potentially crossing the ultimate line. It gives us more to be invested in Boruto in terms of his character. Just looking at his reaction, that's the only thing in my opinion that really makes the most sense. That he might have crossed the line when Momoshiki took over his body, and that it has something to do with Kashin Koji, because this would have been in the time after Sasuke was defeated, because Boruto would have been in his most vulnerable, which is a reminder, because there are still people that do not understand this. Momoshiki can hijack his consciousness. He just cannot revive using Boruto's body. The narrative hasn't mentioned Momoshiki by name since the start of the time skip, and this was intentional. It doesn't show us Boruto using karma until Kawaki forced him for a reason, and we see him continue to freak out even when he's not in the presence of Kawaki for a reason. All signs are pointing to this being a major Chekhov's gun that has not been fired off yet. We have never seen Boruto sweat during the events of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex in the current era, yet he's looking at his karma seal and sweating nervous bullets. And Momoshiki at the end of part 1 was a major plot point because of the dynamic between himself and Boruto. The only thing that I really worry about is potentially having this being a scenario where it might not be enough in terms of trying to make Boruto someone that we can root for. The reason being, and the reason I'm playing devil's advocate here, is that it wouldn't be anything we haven't technically seen already before, because we've seen near deaths over and over in Boruto's manga. The only time Boruto really killed someone when Momoshiki was in control was when he killed Boro, and nobody really cares about the bum Boro. If it's another near death, it needs to be done right. It needs to feel like, otherwise it would feel like it wouldn't evoke the intended response, unless we see Boruto was in shambles because of Sasuke and that led to it. However, clicking here on the right will take you to the new Boruto chapter review, and clicking here on the left will take you to my new 55-minute My Hero Academia video.